Darius Coleman, a seasoned CEO used to the privileges of first class, settled into his seat aboard Stratos Air. Confident and composed in his tailored navy suit, he had pre-ordered his usual meal. Lobster bisque followed by filet mignon, ASH, small indulgence that symbolized the high-level service he expected and had always received. But this flight would be different. When the flight attendant returned with an apologetic smile, informing him that his meal was unavailable, something shifted. She offered him a basic sandwich and tap water instead. The coldness in her tone, the dismissive shrug, the contrast between his treatment and that of the other passengers, white men enjoying caviar and champagne, was unmistakable. This wasn't just a logistical error. It felt personal, intentional. Darius wasn't just another executive. He was the only black man in the first-class cabin, and he felt the sting of being overlooked, minimized, and disrespected. Again. This moment, seemingly trivial, lit a fuse. What began as a routine flight quickly became the catalyst for something far greater. Darius Coleman, a man known for commanding boardrooms and driving billion-dollar deals, wasn't about to let it slide. What followed would not only change the course of his journey but shake the foundations of Stratos Air itself. If you think this is just about a missed meal, think again. Keep watching. What comes next is a powerful move that no one saw coming. The flight attendant's dismissive tone, her hurried retreat, and the absence of any real apology told Darius Coleman everything he needed to know. He hadn't just been ignored as a customer, he had been dismissed as a person. As the only black man in the first-class cabin, the feeling hit him harder than usual. He scanned the room. 6 other passengers, white men, relaxed with glasses of champagne, chatting, as if nothing had happened. And why would they notice? For them, this flight was just another uneventful trip. But for Darius, it was something else entirely. This wasn't a random oversight. This was a familiar pattern. Darius knew this kind of moment all too well. The subtle slights, the quiet reminders that some people believed he didn't belong in certain spaces. But he was no stranger to being underestimated, and he wasn't about to react emotionally. No, Darius planned his responses the same way he approached billion-dollar deals, with strategy and precision. His mind raced, burning with a silent fury. This wasn't just bad service. Something deeper was at play. He could feel it. He wasn't just being served a subpar meal, he was being shown where they thought he stood. Then his phone buzzed. A message from Marcus Brandt, his trusted assistant. "Everything okay?" Darius didn't hesitate. He replied with one directive. "Initiate internal audit protocol. Flight 917. Cabin crew ID needed. Confirm when ready." This had gone beyond a meal. Yeah, wasn't even about that one flight attendant anymore. This was about challenging a culture, about holding Stratos Air accountable for the exclusivity and indifference woven into its service. As the flight wore on, Darius stayed silent, his face unreadable. The crew continued with their routines, unaware of what he'd set in motion. Behind the scenes, Marcus was already deep into the airline's internal records, sifting through employee files, and the findings were damning. The attendant who had slighted Darius had a track record. Previous complaints for discriminatory remarks, unprofessional behavior, and a pattern of favoring certain passengers. This wasn't a one-time failure. It was a symptom of something much bigger. Darius had no interest in petty revenge. He was after systemic change. Later in the flight, he pressed the service button once more, this time with purpose. An older flight attendant approached, his expression wary, sensing a shift in energy. Calmly, Darius asked, "I pre-ordered a luxury meal, yet I received something else. You mentioned prioritizing guests. Can you clarify what that means?" The attendant stammered, caught off guard. But Darius didn't need an answer. "I understand," he said, his words deliberate, his gaze unwavering. "I understand completely." As the plane began its descent into Geneva, Darius was already 2 steps ahead. The conclusion was in motion, and the consequences would be felt well beyond the flight. When the plane landed, 2 airline executives stood waiting at the gate. Darius walked past them without a word. He didn't need to speak. The message had already been sent. He had already sent the video footage, clear, undeniable evidence, to Stratos Air's CEO. And the wheels were already turning. The request for a comprehensive internal audit was underway, quietly but with absolute authority. What the flight attendants didn't realize, what no one on that aircraft yet knew, was that Darius Coleman had set a trap, a silent strategic move designed to uncover every subtle act of discrimination that had gone unnoticed, unchallenged, and unpunished for years. This wasn't about vengeance. It was about accountability. When the cabin crew disembarked in Geneva, expecting the usual routine of farewells and turnover, they were met by a very different reception. A team of human resources officials and internal investigators flanked by corporate security. Their shift had ended, but their reckoning had just begun. No longer would their behavior be shielded by polite smiles and hollow slogans about luxury service. No longer would their dismissive glances, passive-aggressive tones, or selective attentiveness be ignored. The culture of subtle exclusion and bias that had lived unchecked in Stratos Air's first-class cabin had just been dragged into the light, and at the center of it all was the man they had overlooked, Darius Coleman. He didn't need to confront them. He didn't need to raise his voice or create a scene. As he watched the flight attendants file off the plane, unaware of the tidal wave heading straight for them, he felt a quiet, unwavering satisfaction. They would soon understand that every action, even a seemingly minor slight, carries weight. Consequences they could no longer avoid. The transformation had already begun. As Flight 9117 touched down on the tarmac in Geneva, the crew carried on, with their post-landing duties, still locked in their bubble of assumed normalcy. But outside that aircraft door, the world had changed. The moment they stepped off, they were intercepted. What followed was not chaos, but calm, methodical consequence. Their employment records were frozen, their actions documented. The dismissive behavior, the preferential service, the pattern of overlooking passengers who didn't fit a certain image of wealth, it had all been recorded, and now it was under official review. This wasn't just disciplinary action. It was a message. One seemingly insignificant act of disrespect had unraveled a long-standing culture of quiet discrimination, shaking the foundation of how Stratos Air operated at its highest level. There was no dramatic confrontation, no shouting match, no viral outburst. Instead, there was silence, powerful, calculated silence, the kind that forces institutions to look inward. Stratos leadership scrambled, blindsided by the quiet storm. But by the time they realized what had happened, it was too late. The shift was already underway. Policies were being re-evaluated, training programs redesigned. A new standard of accountability was being written into the company's DNA, and it had all started with one man in seat 1A who refused to accept being made invisible. Darius Coleman didn't just hold a crew accountable, he held an entire company to its values. He reminded them, and the world, that respect and dignity are not privileges to be selectively granted. They are non-negotiable. The flight attendants didn't just lose their jobs. They lost the comfort of thinking they could dismiss someone based on quiet biases and get away with it. If this story moved you, if it opened your eyes to the subtle ways people can be diminished, and how one person can push back and force change, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Real Life Stories now. Help us reach 10,000 subscribers so we can continue sharing true accounts like this. Stories that don't just inspire, but ignite real transformation. A homeowners association, commonly known as an HOA, is an organized body, usually formed by a real estate developer or a group of residents, that governs a residential community such as a subdivision, condominium complex, or planned unit development. Its primary purpose is to enforce rules and maintain shared spaces within the neighborhood to ensure a consistent standard of living and to help protect property values. Homeowners in these communities are required to become members of the HOA and pay regular dues which fund the upkeep of common areas like parks, swimming pools, landscaping, and sometimes private roads or security services. The HOA is typically governed by a board of directors made up of elected homeowners who are responsible for managing budgets, making decisions about community matters, and enforcing the association's covenants, conditions, and restrictions, CC&Rs. These rules can regulate everything from the color of a home's exterior and the types of vehicles that can be parked in driveways, to noise levels, holiday decorations, and pet policies. While HOAs can offer benefits such as well-maintained amenities and a more uniform neighborhood appearance, they can also be a source of frustration due to their sometimes rigid rules, mandatory fees, and potential for power imbalances within the board. In serious cases of non-compliance, HOAs may issue fines, suspend community privileges, or even place liens on a homeowner's property. Ultimately, living in an HOA-managed community means agreeing to abide by its regulations in exchange for the benefits of shared management and neighborhood consistency. If this story resonated with you, if it stirred something in you, made you reflect, or reminded you that even the smallest actions can carry deep meaning, then take a moment to let that sit. Stories like this aren't just about one person or one moment. They're about all of us. They remind us that quiet, injustice can happen anywhere, and that true power often lies in calm, calculated action, not noise. Here on Real Life Stories Now, we believe stories can spark change. They can open eyes, start conversations, and challenge the systems that too often go unchecked. But we can't do this without your support. If you found value in this video, please like, comment, and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Tell us what you think in the comments. What would you have done in Darius's shoes? Have you ever been underestimated like that? And most importantly, don't forget to subscribe. We're on a mission to hit 10,000 subscribers, and every one of you makes a difference. Your support allows us to keep uncovering real stories that demand to be told, the ones that might not make headlines but still deserve to be heard. So until next time, stay aware, stay inspired, and remember, sometimes the quietest actions create the loudest echoes. Thanks for watching.